In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, I am going to attempt to answer one of the biggest questions in the 2024 NBA draft cycle. And that is, who is the next Brandin Podziemski? A player that averages less than 5 points a game, transfers to a new school, and then bursts upon the scene as an NBA prospect. So stay tuned to find out who are the three prospects that I believe could be the next Brandin Podziemski. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And before I get started, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/Locked On. Also like, share, subscribe, and spread the word, because I know there are some NBA draft junkies and NBA draft fanatics that want to hear draft talk all year long. And this is the place. There's no off season here on NBA Big Board. I'm going to talk about the draft 4 or 5 days a week, every day until the 24 NBA draft, and then right back at it for 25. But in this episode, like I mentioned in the opening, I'm going to talk about players that I believe could be the next Brandin Podziemski. Now, Podziemski literally came out of nowhere. Around this time last summer, he had already transferred to Santa Clara, and Santa Clara went on a summer tour, and I got some feedback that, hey, this kid is playing well on Santa Clara summer tour. I was able to get some access to some games, and I actually put him on my preseason draft board before he even played a game for Santa Clara. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought he was going to be the 19th pick in the draft or even a first-round pick. I even came around late to him being a first-round pick. But his impact at Santa Clara was there was no doubt about the impact that he made. Now, he averaged 1.4 points per game in 16 games at Illinois. Only averaged 4.3 minutes per game. Shot 42% from the floor, 23% from the field. Not the typical statistics of an NBA prospect or someone that you think is going to be a first-round pick. But what a difference a year makes, and a change of scenery. Transfers to Santa Clara, follows up behind Jalen Williams, who was a lottery pick the year before, averages a shade under 20 points per game, 19.9 to be exact, 8.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shoots 43.8% from three and 48% from the floor, and becomes a first-round pick. All he needed was a change of scenery. Imagine if he stayed in Illinois. I don't know, maybe the situation would have changed, maybe not. But he made a wise decision. I'm not the biggest fan of guys transferring. I am someone that believes, hey, if you sign on the dotted line, stick it out and fight it out. Maybe that's a little old school in me, but I respect guys that transfer. And in this situation, Podziemski made a life-changing decision by going from Illinois to Santa Clara. So who is the Brandin Podziemski in 2024? There's quite a few guys. There's probably hundreds of guys that entered their name in the transfer portal, did not put up big numbers at their first school. Some guys may have transferred back, in a sense, going from a Power 5 school to a mid-major. Some guys probably transferred from a Power 5 to a Power 5, or even a mid-major to a mid-major. But in this episode, I'm going to focus on three guys. Now, this could be actually a 2, 3, 4, maybe even a 10-part series, because I have plenty of time before college basketball. But in this first episode, I'm going to go out on a limb and say there will be more episodes of who is the next Brandin Podziemski. But in this episode, I'm going to focus on three guys that I think have a chance to be the 2024 version of Brandin Podziemski. Now, the first player is Adama Bal. And the correlation here is that he is going to Santa Clara. He started off at Arizona and he is transferring to Santa Clara. So he is probably one of the easier ones, because you think that he can come right in and fill in where Jalen Williams and Brandin Podziemski left off the last 2 years. And Adama Bal is a French prospect, 6'7", 190, 6'11" wingspan. Again, he started his first 2 years at Arizona. He was actually Tommy Lloyd's first recruit. He just has not lived up to the expectations. And he was the odd man out of Arizona's 7-man rotation. He only played 3 minutes in the Pac-12 tournament and didn't even play a single minute in the NCAA tournament. Now, over his career, which was 2 years, he played in 49 games, 2 seasons. He shot 39% from 3, which is very respectable. Only 42% from the floor. The vast majority of his shots were threes. He took 78 shots in 2 years at Arizona. 51 of the 78 shots were three-pointers. But again, shot a respectable 39%. This year, he shot 85% at the rim. But it was a very, very, very small sample size. Only 13 attempts. But at 6'7", with a 6'11" wingspan, I think he is a good passer. I think there is a chance for him to develop into a secondary playmaker. He is along the lines of a lot of French prospects. France has a number of big guards that are ball handlers and ball movers. Not necessarily, I wouldn't say great playmakers, but they've done a good job of developing big wings that can handle the ball, that can defend, that can make the right pass, initiate the offense in a pinch. But sometimes, and it's not a knock on French prospects, but sometimes they're missing that grit or that extra. I don't know how to put it in words, but there's like an extra gear of competitive fire to want to take over games. Sometimes it's just easy for them to just kind of fit in and blend in with their teammates as opposed to enforcing their will and just showcasing all of their natural talent. So I think that could be a case with Ball, but I think at Santa Clara, he's going to be given the keys to where he will be the man. Again, I'll just give you some numbers. His freshman year, he only took 3 shots at the rim, missed all 3, but he shot 50% on jumpers, so he was 11 of 22. And he has a positive assist-to-turnover ratio, which is pretty good when the guy's playing limited minutes. But again, he's 6'7", 6'11" wingspan, can handle, can pass, make plays for others. So he is an intriguing prospect. Now, this year, Arizona, again, he did not play a lot of minutes per game. Had one game where he showed what he was capable of. He had a 14-point game, but it was against Nicholls State. It wasn't against major competition. But one of the reasons I believe that he has a chance to be the next Podziemski is because obviously he's going to Santa Clara. He does have the skill set to be an NBA player. But he's only 20 years old. He will have 3 years of experience and he'll still only be 20 years old. So he will be a little bit younger than some of the freshmen. Definitely younger, or at least the same age as some of the sophomores. But he'll have 3 years of college experience. Predicting 1 year of where he's playing major minutes because he just did not play a lot of major minutes at Arizona. Now, another reason why I think that he could be the next Brandin Podziemski is because he showed some flashes in growth this summer playing for France at the FIBA U20s. And I like to look at the way players play in the U20s, playing for their national teams. And sometimes I think that experience playing competitive basketball, representing your country over the summer, gives you a little bit of a leg up in a sense over some of your peers in the States who aren't necessarily playing that type of competitive basketball over the summer. For example, I use another French prospect, Bilal Koulibaly, who didn't put up huge numbers last year playing for the French under-18 team. But you could see the progression, you could see the confidence between the regular season and 21-22 and the way he played in the summer, and the trajectory led to him having a really breakout 22-23 season, which led to him being a top 10 pick. Not saying Adama Bal is going to be like that, but I thought he showed some flashes in the U20s. He averaged 11 points, 3.6 rebounds per game, 1.9 assists. He shot 37% from 3. Now, he only shot 61% from the foul line, but overall I thought he played well. And he had some games where he looked a little passive in the beginning, but then he had some games where he had a game against Iceland where he had 19 points. Then he had a game against Poland where he had 11 points and 4 steals, where he showed like his defensive flashes. Had an 18-point game against Serbia. Serbia is always known for putting together really competitive national teams. Then in the semifinal game, he had 12 points. And he ended up, I wouldn't say he led France, but he helped lead France under 20 team to the title, to the U20 title. So I feel like the momentum that he has coming into this season based off of the way he played for the French national team this summer could be a good sign for Adama Bal. And maybe he is the 2024 version of Brandin Podziemski. All right, when we return, I have 2 more prospects that I want to talk about. One guy, Arterio Morris. He was a McDonald's All-American. I can't say that he came out of nowhere, but he fits the criteria because he averaged less than 5 points per game and he transferred. Now he's going from Power 5 to Power 5. But I'll talk about Arterio after we talk about none other than FanDuel, which is our sponsor for today. And football season is right around the corner. Actually, it is back. Preseason starts this week. I think they already had a preseason game. And FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time that team wins in the regular season. So all you have to do is pick a team to win, and you will get bonus bets every time they win. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl. For me, I'm going with the Bengals. I can get bonus bets for every victory, and you can use bonus bets on the spreads, player props, over and unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Once again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Once again, big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. And in this episode, I'm talking about who could possibly be the 2024 version of Brandin Podziemski, a player that averages less than 5 points per game, transfers to a new school, and then puts his name or makes a name for himself as an NBA prospect. The next player that I'm going to talk about, I think he was already on NBA radars based off of his high school resume, and it is Arterio Morris, a sophomore from Kansas who transferred from Texas. Now, Morris was a consensus 5-star recruit. 24/7 had him as the number 16 ranked player nationally, and they actually had him as the #1 point guard in the 2022 recruiting class, a class that had Anthony Black and Keontae George and Cason Wallace. All of those guys are from the same area. But he was one of 5 McDonald's All-Americans from Dallas. 4 of the 5 McDonald's All-Americans were drafted in June's draft from Cason Wallace, Anthony Black, Keontae George, Jordan Walsh, and Morris was the only one that was not drafted. Now at Texas, he played in 38 games, only averaged 4.6 points per game, 1.4 rebounds, shot 41% from the floor. He showed flashes of his potential, but he was stuck in a very deep guard rotation, which is very interesting to me because I feel like he transferred it to the same exact situation by going to Kansas. Now, if he stays at Texas, now I don't know the situation and know why he left Texas, but Serge Jabari Rice and Marcus Carr are gone. Now, they did bring in Max Abmas, another Dallas guy, to come in and play. But I feel like Morris was in a position to play, even though it probably would have been another small 3-guard lineup because you have Tyrese Hunter is back and Abmas, who's a small guard, and Morris. So I guess he would have been playing like small forward in a sense, or been another guard in a small 3-guard rotation, which seems to be pretty common. But going to Kansas, he's in the same situation. Maybe even worse. Kansas has a crowded backcourt with DeJuan Harris returning. Then you have Kevin McCullough. Then you got Nick Timberlake, who was a transfer from Townsend, who put up good numbers. And then you have Elmarko Jackson, who I'm really high on. I have him as a top 5 pick on my big board that will be coming out soon. So Morris is in an interesting predicament. But so far, I mean, I know you got to take the early international road trips with a grain of salt in a sense, because sometimes they're playing professional teams. Like, for example, Kansas just played the Bahamas national team, I believe, that had Eric Gordon. How in the world is Eric Gordon playing for the Bahamas when he played for Team USA, if I'm not mistaken? I thought you can only, anyway, Buddy Hield. So anyway, they lost that game. I don't know if he played or not, but in an exhibition game, now it was a blowout. It was a blowout. It was a 106-71 win against like a Puerto Rican select team. But Morris actually led Kansas with 20 points. He had 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. And he was the best player on the floor in that particular game. But I still think it's a crowded backcourt. But I think that he definitely made a name for himself. Now, again, he is not like Podziemski, where he's totally unknown. It comes out of nowhere. If he has a great year this year, I don't think it would catch people or too many people by surprise. What I like about Morris is that, at least on the high school level, he was advanced as far as his strength. He is a really good athlete, like an explosive athlete. My first time seeing him play a game, it was actually against Keontae George, and he was just dominating the game with just hustle, energy, effort, athleticism. He was getting tip dunks. He was getting steals. He looked like a grown man playing against kids other than Keontae. He is a highlight reel finisher. He has very quick hops. Like, he has NBA athleticism. Now, the passing vision, I think, is decent. I don't think it's great. I think he's more so of a combo than a natural playmaker, but he has the tools. If he's able to put it together with his athleticism, he could be an NBA player. But the motor is what sets him apart from other guys. The motor, the athleticism. Again, he just impacts games with the athleticism, the energy, the motor. He's competitive. He gets a lot of points out in transition, has blow-by speed. He's a guy that can turn a rebound into a personal fast break. I think the upside is high. I saw him play in a playoff game his senior year, and he was just dunking all over the place. I mean, I think he may have had like 4 or 5 dunks. Just a great athlete, and if you can put it all together, maybe add a little pace to his game and improve the outside shooting and the playmaking, I mean, he could be a lottery pick. He's that talented. Now, the concerns about him is he got into a little trouble off the court. I don't want to go too deep into that. He's a very streaky shooter. May not have a true position in a sense. He may just be a basketball player. I don't understand why 247 had him listed as a point guard. Needs to improve his jumper. But he is a great defensive player. I think Kansas, I mean, they got some dogs in the defensive end. If you're an opposing Big 12 guard, you better get your rest going against Kansas, because Elmarko defends, DeJuan Harris defends, Kevin McCullough is one of the best defenders in college basketball. So Kansas has some dogs on the defensive end. They're going to be competitive. But again, I don't fully, I get it, it's Kansas. I get the appeal. The situation may be similar to what it was at Texas. Maybe not. I could be totally wrong. But I do think that he is a great candidate to break out and be the next Brandin Podziemski. And again, the criteria is you transfer to a new school, you average less than 5 points per game as a freshman. All right, when we return, I have a big surprise player that I think could be the next Brandin Podziemski in 2024. He is someone that you probably haven't heard of. Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world am I talking about the guy that averaged 3.7 points per game and did not have the most efficient shooting numbers? But again, last year at this time, if I would have told you Brandin Podziemski was going to be a first-round pick, you would have thought I was crazy. You would have thought I was nuts, because he only averaged 1.4 points per game and played only 16 games, 4.3 minutes per game. When we return, I want to talk to you about Noah Shelby, a Vanderbilt transfer that will be playing basketball for Rice this season. Stay tuned. And 3. Now, the last player that I want to talk about is Noah Shelby. It's a name that you may not be familiar with, but he had an excellent prep career in Texas. He was in the same class as, like I mentioned, Arterio Morris, Keontae George, Anthony Black, Cason Wallace. And he was one of the better players in the state. Had a season in high school where he averaged 31 points per game. He was a McDonald's All-American nominee. He actually was a starting point guard on the team that featured Keontae George and Rylan Griffin, who I think has the potential to be a first-round pick and is definitely due for a breakout season at Alabama. And Noah had offers from Kansas, Texas, Baylor. He ended up choosing Vanderbilt. He is a high academic guy. Went to one of the best academic high schools. Actually, he went to 2 high schools in Texas. Went to like 2 of the best academic high schools. He's a player that has a long-term vision outside of basketball. Wants to be a GM. Very cerebral player. So going to a school like Vanderbilt made a lot of sense for him because he valued the Vanderbilt education. But he goes to a situation where Vanderbilt has a bunch of older players ahead of him, which, you know, it's crazy in college basketball. You can be a highly touted freshman and you can end up going to a school where you are playing with or behind a player that plays the same position as you, that is like 5 years older. That's just the era of college basketball. But Noah is a guy that I've been watching for years. I've seen him play pickup against G League guys back when he was in high school, and he absolutely torched them. He is a flamethrower. Now, the stats at Vanderbilt aren't going to back up my statement, but I think he's one of the better shooters in the country. And at Vanderbilt, he played a lot off the ball, but at Rice, they're going to give him the keys. They had a transfer that moved on to, I believe, Xavier, and Noah is going to be their point guard. Now, I haven't been on campus, but I heard that basically their system is called Green Light U, where you are allowed to play your game, let it fly, you have total freedom. And I think that absolutely fits Noah Shelby because, again, he is a scorer. He's someone that reminds me maybe a little bit of Mo Williams, maybe a little bit of Fred VanVleet, a guy that can be your primary ball handler, but he can also play off the ball because he's such a good shooter. You can run him off pin downs, you can run him off screens, you can just use him in a variety of ways. Now, at Vanderbilt, he was exclusively off the ball. And I think that I know that didn't allow him to showcase like his full arsenal and his full game. He's got good size. He's 6'3", about 188 pounds, but also has a 6'8" wingspan. And again, he is an absolute flamethrower. Now, I got people everywhere. And so I've had a chance to see some of his film at Rice. And I've had the opportunity to basically watch the film and compile the stats. And again, I know it's preseason intra-squad. It's not even preseason. It's summer intra-squad scrimmages. But in his scrimmages, he's shooting 51% from the floor and 49% from threes. 29 of 51 from 3, 28 assists, and 10 steals in a couple games from their scrimmages. So I think that the move to Rice is going to open up his game, is going to allow him to showcase his ability to put the ball in the basket. I think he's going to be in line for a breakout season. And he could be the 2024 version of Brandin Podziemski because, again, we're talking about a guy that is literally coming out of nowhere, does have some SEC experience. Vanderbilt was one of the best teams in the second half of the season, and I think Jerry Stackhouse has done an excellent job of turning that program around because I think it's difficult to win in a conference like the SEC when you are at like a very, very strong academic school like Vanderbilt. I think it may be a little bit difficult to recruit some players because of Vanderbilt's academic requirements. But anyway, Noah Shelby is a guy that I believe could be the 2024 version of Brandin Podziemski. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe, and I am